the regular meeting of the Eastpointe City Council. It is 8:05. And we'll start with new business, and our first item is the bid award for Johnson Avenue Reconstruction Project. This is a CDBG number C7062A, and it's a AEW project number 101450507. So Mr. Pangori is here to answer every question we might have on this.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. On July 31st, the city received bids for the Johnston Avenue reconstruction project from Forest to 10 Mile. We received 6 bids. The low bidder was Florence Cement Company with a bid of $1,056,268.88. This project is funded in part with additional block grant monies through Macomb County. Those additional $350,000 in block grant funds are going to be, knock on wood, hopefully approved by the County Board of Commissioners this Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock at their meeting. It's important that the award tonight be contingent upon that approval at the direction of the county in regards to this project. Beyond that, we are as Mr. Cotton indicated, we had a meeting with the residents earlier this week last week, regarding the water main project and the following paving projects. We've had a pre-con meeting with the water main contractor. They're going to get started next week on Thursday, and then we hope for the paving contract to be starting maybe 3 weeks or so after that. So it is imperative that we award the project tonight in order to keep on the schedule. The block grant monies, not even the additional $350,000 of block grant funds and the 2017 block grant funds that we're using for this project, both have to be spent by December 31st or we lose them. So I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
I know some people did have questions about this, and it seemed like your questions were answered, were they?
My question was answered, but I did want to follow up and say, between the two companies that were close together, I see we have more information now. Do you have any experience that one has been easier to work with, or the work has lasted longer?
Well, I think what you're referring to is the low bidder and the next bidder, HMC LLC. There was only a few $100 difference between the two bids. The second bidder, HMC LLC, is a brand new company. They just started working this year, and we quite frankly don't have any experience with them directly. Some of the partners of that company worked for other companies that we have worked with individually, but not as this new entity. So we really don't have any experience with them.
The Mark Anthony's the new one, right?
No, HMC LLC is the new one.
Okay.
We've done a lot of work here with Florence.
We have.
Did you know it started in Eastpointe?
Pardon me?
It started in East Detroit
Oh, did they?
as Grove Cement
I did not know that.
in the 40s. All right, any other questions?
Yes, I had one actually. The first one might be for you though, Mr. Cotton. We talked about the trees earlier. Can we, and we've talked about that on other, yes, I turned it off for a 5-minute, I'm back on. All right, now you can hear me. Mr. Cotton, trees, we've talked about replacing them if we've ever needed to get rid of any on projects. Can we follow up on something? How many trees? You said a number earlier, I think.
Roughly 20. So I think the question is there room in these bids to replace the trees? Was that something, a unit cost?
We did not include replacement trees in the bid. Typically in the past, the city has purchased those trees under a different program, and then in some cases under a grant program, and planted them separately.
Right, we did. I think just similar to Almond, I guess. Almond, we didn't go through relief. You know, obviously we've planted some trees on Kelly Road, and yeah, it was Kelly Road both times, through a charitable, a nonprofit organization, Relief Michigan. But then on Almond, we paid somebody to, I don't recall who,
There
I
were
think we
only,
offered it to the homeowners that were interested in having one. put
but there were only 2 people that responded positively. They wanted a tree.
No, but we planted, like at least 13 or something, I recall.
On Almond?
Yeah, in Almond, there's more than 2 trees. Yeah, it's like 13 sticks out in my head, but there's a lot of brand-new trees in the right-of-way section. I don't recall exactly how we did that, but I figured something like that again, if we did have to, on Almond?
I was just gonna add, unfortunately, I don't know the details of how those were purchased and planted. We weren't involved in that on Almond.
No.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
It was
Mr.
a
Cotton, if
separate,
Mr.
that was a
Those
separate
actually
project.
came as part of, we had an MDOT grant for trees in the Gratiot median, and we had extra trees that ended up over on Almond. So it was grant money that got them in.
I will say that Joe is working with Relief again for this fall planting. Am I hearing that it's kind of the context here that you'd like to have a tree removed, a tree planted?
I would. I mean, I don't know how the rest.
Well, I think it'd
of-
have to be up to the homeowner, though.
You could, but
You know,
we,
as long as the homeowner wanted the tree replaced.
because the homeowner has to have the responsibility for
Of
watering it
maintaining, yeah.
initially, and a lot of the homeowners didn't want to do that responsibility. But you're not going to be completed in time for us to plant trees
Not
with this project.
fall. They could be planted in the spring.
They'd have to be planted in the spring.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this minute, you know, if it was next year.
But yeah, that's something to discuss in the spring, you know, to offer that to them, unless we do have a grant, if we do the relief again, maybe they'll let us plant tree, you know, offer them there.
Well, I
Like they
think-
did in Kelly, let us offer them to the homeowners.
I think the grants actually come through Macomb County, but Relief, it helps us with the planning and the planting.
Well, if we do, I think a lot of residents think these new trees we're planting are going to ruin the infrastructure by their house, but we made sure we planted the correct trees, you know, maybe 50 or more years ago when those trees were planted, nobody realized that that was going to happen. So we need to make sure that we say that, because I think that's probably why a lot of people are hesitant, at least on Facebook. I know I've seen a lot of people comment like that on various posts. When we even talked about Relief, where we're getting free trees, residents are like, oh, great, it's going to screw up all my infrastructure. But they're not, because we make sure that group for sure knows, the city knows, DTE has sent us info. We don't plant trees that are their roots are too shallow to
And we have,
hurt anything now.
I believe we have about 15 different trees that people can choose
Yeah.
that are appropriate for over water lines.
Believe it or not, the majority of the trees that we're having to remove on Johnston are because the existing water service is directly under that tree. The tree
Okay.
was planted right on top of the water service, or very
So
close
you
to it.
just can't get to it.
Pardon me?
So you just can't
Yeah,
get to it
in order to
without-
get to it, to reconnect it to the new water main, there'll be a lot of root disruption.
it
And
probably-
the trees are not the greatest type of trees to be in the street right away. So only thing I would suggest is if we are gonna be replanting trees, that we make sure that they don't go back over top of those water services.
Sure. Okay. And then,
Right, I'll entertain a motion then.
I just have one more question, Madam Mayor. The forms I just read in the couple minutes we had, the couple-minute recess, this is everything this might be a Mr. Cotton question also, sorry, Steve. This, right, you're saying these two was everything that was submitted, this bid form? The companies did not submit anything else with this?
Yeah, if you could hold that up for Steve's review. This is the apples-to-apples comparison for the 2 lowest bids. I do not know if anything else was submitted for each.
There is other sheets where we ask them to indicate who their subcontractors are going to be, who their bonding company is, who their insurance company is. There's some other additional sheets that were not included in that. Some, what equipment they have. Some bidders attach multiple sheets that list all the equipment that they own. There was a lot more data that was submitted with their bid than just those 4 sheets.
Well, that's the sort of thing I was interested in seeing, because I sat in on the towing opening, and one of the companies submitted like a book this thick of, I'm assuming, all the answers to the questions you're talking about, equipment or buildings, and probably company history. That's, with such a close amount of money, it'd be nice to know these other sorts of things, or at least what's in there. If it is very specific info that's not going to change this, that'd be good to know, but if someone's submitting for $1 million project, I'd be going above and beyond and giving additional information than what's just on this bid form, and we haven't received that.
We can certainly provide that, although I guess go back to the fact that we've worked with
Right.
Florence Cement Company for many, many years. They've done a lot of projects. They were the lowest bid.
Right, by
we know their
$900,
capabilities.
yeah.
Pardon me?
By $900 on
Right.
a $1 million bid. And I think there's only, well, if we need to wait for Thursday, there's only 3 more business days till our next meeting too, so this, delaying, I think, is 3 days doesn't seem like a lot. Because I'd like to see this information. This is a huge bid, and you know, I guess I don't know how the rest of council feels, because obviously it's all of our decisions. But I'd like to see like all the information that about these companies, because you could get to understand what the company's about, all that from reading just a few pages for such a big project in the city. That's what I was trying to ask in my emails, and then we just got this today, I guess. Yeah, like right before the meeting. So I don't know. No one else
Well,
is saying.
No, I mean, when I was looking at how close it was, I wanted more information. But my understanding is, because Thursday the county's going to approve it, we have to be ready to go to get the 350. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, the main issue is just the timing of the entire project, because the project has to be completed during the remainder of this construction season. So we don't have a lot of time to waste.
Madam,
I think we should ask for a motion, and let's go forward with that. And if the motion goes down, then the project will go down. And we would be out that 350,000.
That is my concern. Madam Mayor, I will make a motion to award the bid for the Johnson Avenue reconstruction projects, Forest to 10 Mile CDVG number C7-06-2A, AEW project number 0145-0507 to Florence Cement Company Incorporated of 12585 23 Mile Road, Shelby Township, Michigan 48315, for the unit prices stated in its bid dated July 31st, 2018, for an estimated amount of $1,056,268.88, plus a contingency amount of 5%, or $52,813.44, for a total of $1,109,082.32, and authorize the deputy clerk to execute all necessary documents related to this bid award, contingent upon the Macomb County Commission approving the substantial plan amendment to the county's 2016 annual action plan on this Thursday, August 16th, and receipt of funding agreement.
Do we have support?
Support.
Please call the roll.
So, well, hold on. If we approve this a week from today, we'd still receive the funds, right? I think it
Yeah,
would.
you will.
It was, yeah. So we're talking a whole three business days, and I mean, obviously, I don't want to vote no on this, because obviously this is a ton of money that offsets our project costs. So
We do have a pre-construction meeting scheduled already with the contractor, the low bidder, assuming that you guys award this tentatively and the county does approve the funds on Thursday for Monday of next week. We would obviously have to cancel that if you
So
decided not.
if the county doesn't approve the amount of money, but the county was the one that called us, correct, and said there was an availability?
I have no reason to believe that the county won't approve the money. It's just we can't enter into a contract for the money until they approve it.
Correct.
I mean, in my opinion, I trust Mr. Pangori's opinion of Florence Cement Company, if he's done work with them in the past, which I think we've done work with them in the past also.
yeah,
So, I mean, I'm fine with approving it today, but if the majority wants to wait till next week, I'm fine with that
Next
also.
week? So we would have another meeting next week?
Next Tuesday.
Well, our regular meetings.
Our
next
regular meeting's next Tuesday, so if
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and it's been supported. Please call a roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
no,
Councilmember DeMonico,
We shouldn't have probably voted on this already, but, no.
Councilmember Owens,
no.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes,
But,
Can we make a motion to table it till next week?
Yeah.
so now,
I'm really concerned when you're going before the county on Thursday and you're gonna get 4 no's and 1 yes.
I thought it wouldn't affect us receiving the money.
No, it won't. It won't.
Okay.
I mean, if, ultimately, you're gonna have to award a contract to a contractor.
Yeah.
Right.
We just can't do that before the meeting on Thursday where they allocate the funds to the city. If you wanna revisit this next Tuesday, you can, but we're just losing a week's worth of planning time, contract agreement time, bonds and insurances, all of the paperwork, the stuff that goes into putting these projects together.
I understand that. Well, what I was going to say is the alternative motion should have been to just table it, not to vote
No on it.
no on this.
But there was a motion on the floor that had to go through.
Right,
The
yeah, because
vote.
now we were already in voting, so I had to pick yes or no.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because now it's like,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. I do think it's appropriate that we be recognized by the mayor as the presiding officer. I thank you for that recognition. I know Rich Albright can speak to this too, but anyone who moved in the prevailing vote can move for reconsideration as long as it's within a time period which is up till next meeting. I want to ask several questions, though. However, how many bids have you recommended for award, Steve, approximately?
Oh, in my career, hundreds probably.
And how many have gone, based on your recommendation, how many have gone south? What percentage did not pan out or you had issues with?
There's only one that sticks in my mind.
So would you say that's 99.5, 99.9% worked out favorably?
I would say that's,
And how many have you recommended award to the non-low bidder?
that's a handful in my career.
All right, so let's say half a dozen. And in those cases, what differences were there between the low bidder and the other high bidder?
I mean, in one case I can recall when I was a young engineer, I was actually here in Eastpointe on a water main project. The low bidder didn't meet the bonding requirements, so we recommended that it be awarded to the next bidder. The city and us ended up getting sued in that case. Both lawsuits were dismissed, but we spent an awful lot of money defending ourselves on a kind of a silly lawsuit. But back to your question, it's typically for reasons other than the difference in funds. It's typically for reasons that the bidder's not qualified for the work that's contemplated. It really is not, it's typically not regarding the difference in the bid.
Last question. What happens, in your experience, with communities and their reputations, the reputations of these communities, when there are experiences where engineers' recommendations are not followed, or the low bids are not taken, or there's delay in time and expense associated with bidding?
I guess it kind of sours the bidders. They are less apt to submit bids in the future, potentially. It could potentially, as I indicated earlier, could potentially lead to litigation if the low bidder is qualified and they're not awarded the project.
Madam Mayor, if I could.
Please.
I think so. My whole initial reason for this, I think it's a little blown out of proportion now, was we're talking 2 business days. I wasn't saying anything about Florence. They're great guys as far as I know. I had no issue with their bid or anything. So hopefully they don't feel sour about this if they even realize that this conversation will take place. I don't think there's anyone in the audience from any of the bidders. It was just that if there was gonna be a pre-planning meeting on Monday, it could be moved to Wednesday now, but it's just to look at a little more information, and we're talking 2 business days here. That was only we might go with Florence. I might be happy to go with Florence, but with just such close, I don't like just going with the lowest bidder. We're talking about $900. If somehow there is something that they do a way better job of, or something that impresses everyone on council, we're gonna go with someone else for $900 on $1 million project. That's all. I mean, I think everyone gets that. That's all I had, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't against Florence either, like I had stated even before I made my vote. I was just, someone wanted more
Yeah.
time to do more research, and I was just voting to accommodate that.
I believe that there's another problem. Number one, we are on TV, so we are on YouTube right now, no matter what you think about nobody being in the audience. They're probably watching the bid going on. My big problem is, I believe that the county would feel better about this, knowing the commissioners, if they knew that everything was in order and ready to go on this project. That is a considerable amount of money that the county is releasing. But I have another concern as well, because if you have another meeting, now you have to try to reestablish your pre-con meeting. Those aren't always the easiest things, because you bring in a number of engineers and contractors and so forth, and that's a huge deal. And to try and rearrange all those people 2 days later is very difficult to do, or to reschedule that. So I have a real concern with what we've just done.
Madam Mayor, I echo that 100%. There's 2 forms of waste whenever any organization does an assessment of their practices. One is too many steps, and the other is too much of something. This vote that you've taken constitutes both forms of waste. It's requiring additional steps, additional changes, rescheduling, and it's for a reason that would, even if approved, cost more money for no gain. So it's a waste. So the $900 extra is not the low bid. If the word goes out that a certain community does not accept a bona fide, otherwise highly qualified, well-experienced, proven commodity that's low bid, then why would a bidder want to take the time and energy to do that? Also, you have on staff, I don't know how many decades of experience our city engineer has, plus other financial leaders on our staff with many years of experience. For anyone who does not have those experiences to add steps and delay is simply operating out of their sphere of appropriate influence, and represents waste and an issue with our expectation of low bids in the future. I would urge the City Council to reconsider that vote.
So what's the point of even bringing this to us if we're just gonna always approve the lowest bidder? It's not the whole point of this process. We're supposed to look out for the best of the city, and if there's something that we think is better than something else, especially for 0.08% difference in bids, I'd be happy to pay an extra, $1 for something that is better than something else.
I can tell you that AEW has many times before brought forward projects, and they didn't always recommend the lowest bidder. Very frequently, they'll recommend another bidder because they know the quality of the work was much better. So they don't always represent the lowest bidder.
Right, and I'm not saying, I think, Steve, you do a great job. I'm not at all saying it has anything to do with that either. It's just.
Don't think, I understood you just wanted to see more info. I think this particular project came up quick because,
Yeah.
Because of the availability
funding.
And we're running out of time also.
of
Um,
of $350,000.
and I think normally, I would always err on the side of council can get more information if they want. I know that in this instance, I feel like I was trying to get out of you, is one better than the other, but I think you feel kind of equal about the performance of the two companies. Not the two top ones, the top and the lowest and third lowest.
Yeah.
So, all that being said, that's why I felt comfortable tonight, kind of all those factors playing into it, but,
I'm really concerned because if the project doesn't go through Johnson in a timely manner, Johnson will not get done because you will not have that extra money come next year.
All right, we're talking 2 business days.
Mr. Pangori, do you know when if we were to go with, approve Florence tonight, do you know when they are expected to start the project?
We're estimating, although we haven't had pre-con meeting with them yet, it's probably going to be mid-September.
Mid-September.
Yes, and it generally takes 3 to 4 weeks for them to get all their bonds and insurances and contract information together. So we're really working under a tight time frame. Even scheduling the pre-construction meeting takes at least a week, or utility companies balk and they won't come.
So do you think 2 days will hurt? I mean, that is his job as counsel, is to, even though, no disrespect, that is, you have more experience than we do on certain things, but it's nothing wrong with checking the person that checks the check and stuff like that. It's checks and balances. So him, looking at what you say is okay, I don't think nothing is wrong with that for 2 days. Do you agree with that?
I think we're really talking about a week.
Yeah.
You're talking about a week or 2 days?
Well, from today to next week, but you had the meeting.
And then you're going to
You'd
have to
do the meeting a week later. It would be the 27th of August when you'd
and
be
then
able
you're
to
going
do
to have
that
to
meeting.
reschedule the pre-con meeting, and then add another 2 or 3 weeks on top of that for the bonds and insurance and everything. You're talking probably the end of September, and if we have an early snow, this thing's not going to get done.
Well, so that too, if it snows a week earlier, then that's our whole.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just it's a week delay on a very, very tight project already.
I mean, have you had experience with council saying, can I check over it? I know this is not the first time in history that council said, let's hold off and.
Generally, you rely upon our expertise to present to you our recommendations. We typically there's sometimes we get a lot of information submitted with the bids. And if you wanted to see all that information and go through all that information before you made an award, it would lengthen the whole process.
Can we start seeing that, I guess, from now on? Would you like that?
Sure, yeah, I've asked that in the past too.
He has presented in the past, he's presented a stack of papers this high with all the engineering drawings and so forth. He does that all the time.
I'm not saying Mr. Pangori, because he'll.
Madam Mayor?
Please.
It's been asked, what is the role of city council in the case of approval of bids? The role of the city council is to be a check on the financial practices and to ensure that the right processes have been followed. It's been advertised. The specifications have been written and posted. It's been advertised. It's been received in due order. No one's appears to have been bribed or unduly influenced. And check, 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 check. If there's all checks, then absent another policy, which I'm going to get to, then the low bid is 99.99% of the time what elected bodies do. In the cases where they don't, it's because there's a local purchase policy preference. That's often something that exists. Within 5%, the city council reserves the right. It's posted in advance. All the bidders know it. If you meet certain parameters, you're going to deviate with as long as it's within 5%. Sometimes that's if your business is located in the town. Sometimes it's because your business pays a certain type of living wage. Sometimes it has to do with something else that has merit to your city council. But it's done in advance. Something of this nature is highly unusual. And I just need to point that out to you in my duties. And I think I'm not speaking just about the week or the month or whatever, or even whether Johnson gets done this year. I'm really making the case that this is a precedent you do not want as part of your reputation. And if you do want to deviate from a duly qualified, highly recommended, highly experienced low bidder, then you'll want to do it based on some policy that you've pre-established. And once again, I recommend that the City Council vote to reconsider that action that you just took.
It could be
So
either-
I'll ask the city council.
Madam Mayor, I motion to reconsider the motion that was just made.
Madam Mayor, it could either be a motion to reconsider, and that wouldn't automatically reverse the prior action. If the council was
Okay.
inclined to do that, it would be a motion to rescind.
All right, so you made the motion?
Motion to
Rescind.
rescind.
Do we have support?
I think it has to be one of the other members for
Yeah, one of the people
support,
that
'cause I,
voted no, right? So, yeah, I will support that.
Please call the roll.
He's, Councilman
Mr.
DeMonico
DeMonico.
supported that?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes. And then we need to have another motion.
Yes, on the initial motion.
Right.
Mr. Kleinfeld?
Or a motion to table for a week, I guess, is
Or-
what I've been,
Or a motion to table, yes.
I'm inclined to finish the action tonight. So I'd like to just be able to say, I'd like to present the same motion I did previously without having to
Read it.
read that
Again?
entire paragraph.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Support.
Move to support. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're still sticking around, right? You have one more thing,
I think so.
which is your item, and we'll just go ahead. The next item.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of the backup on this, but this is in regards to the county contract, and I believe the support or the backup material is to authorize administration to execute that contract when it becomes available, which we believe is going to be sometime late Thursday after the County Board of Commissioners meeting or on Friday morning.
Just a comment on this, by the way, I meant to say this earlier. The Infrastructure County Committee approved this CDBG allocation yesterday, and that's a committee of the whole. So meaning we're probably sitting pretty good for Thursday. FYI.
All right, do you want to make the motion for the approval of the agreement between City of Eastpointe and the County of Macomb?
Sure. Madam Mayor, I will motion to approve the agreement between the City of Eastpointe and Macomb County for an additional $350,000 of the 2016 Community Development Block Grant Funds, and the mayor and deputy city clerk be authorized to sign said agreement contingent upon the Macomb County Board of Commissioners approving the award of the funding through a substantial plan amendment to the county's 2016 Annual Action Plan on Thursday, August 16th, 2018.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico, Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido.
Yes.
Thank you.
Will you be at that meeting?
Either myself or Mr. Marucci will be at that meeting.
So that would have to be signed, right, on Friday morning?
Yeah, we'll find out between now and Thursday whether or not we'll be able to get the agreement actually Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. But as soon as we can get it, we'll get it here so it can be executed.
Okay, all right, thank you. Item C is a special event application for a camp meeting in 2018 with the outdoor church services. Can we get a motion for that, please?
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the request from Oasis International Church to hold a camp meeting 2018, outdoor church services on Saturday, August 18th, 2018, from 7:30 to 10 p.m., and Sunday, August 19th, 2018, from 3 to 6 p.m., with the following conditions. 1, the organization must obtain a permit for the tent and have inspections prior to the event. 2, the organization must provide a site plan showing that they meet the required setbacks for the tent from existing buildings. 3, the tent must comply with the adopted fire code, section 2401. 4, poster boards cannot be placed anywhere other than on the church property. 5, if the organization is preparing food, they must obtain a temporary food license from the Macomb County Health Department. And 6, the organization must submit to the City of General Liability insurance certificate naming the City of Eastpointe as additional insured on the policy for this event in the amount of $1 million.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Our next item is a special event application for Rotary for beer and wine testing. Do we have a motion for that, please?
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the request from Eastpointe Rotary to hold a beer and wine tasting on Friday, September 7th, 2018, from 5 to 8 p.m. at Drew's Garden.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
I have to abstain, I'm a Rotarian. Let's move on to designation of voting representatives for the Michigan Municipal League Annual Meeting. I believe at the last meeting, the Mayor Pro Tem and myself were alternate, delegate and alternate.
Okay.
All of us are going, and it's usually the mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'll motion to designate you, Suzanne Pixley, as the city's official voting representative, and Mike Kleinfeld as the alternate voting representative to the Michigan Municipal League's annual business meeting to be held on Friday, September 21st, 2018.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. I would just like to say that in the next month, you'll probably get a list of all the legislative things that would be voted on. So review those and let us know how you think that we should vote. And everybody's welcome to go into the voting. You've been there before, Cardi, I believe.
Actually, I haven't been to the convention.
haven't
yet,
been to the
just
convention,
Capitol
yeah.
Conference.
Michael had to vote last year because I had pneumonia. All right. Let's go to the resolution, number 1866. Designation of the street administrator.
All right.
Madam Mayor, I motion to adopt resolution number 1866, designating Randy D. Ultimus as the street administrator.
Support?
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. The other items are just approval of the dates and times. So item G, we would need a motion to set the informal city council meet and greet for the public safety director finalist. We have a motion.
I will motion to approve an informal city council meet and greet for the public safety director finalists on Tuesday, August 21st at 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. in the city council chambers.
Support.
Move with support. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Item H is the schedule of the public hearing for programming of the fiscal year 2018 CDBG funds.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, September 4th at 7 p.m. for the purpose of receiving comments on the proposed reprogramming of $105,887 in fiscal year 2018 Community Development Block Grant funds from Johnson Street reconstruction project to the fiscal year 2018 Donald Street Water Main Replacement Project.
Do we have support?
Support?
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Item I is the scheduling of the city manager interview dates and times.
Madam Mayor, I motion to schedule the first city manager candidate interviews for Wednesday, September 26, 2018, at 5 p.m., and schedule the second city manager candidate interviews for Thursday, September 27th, 2018, at 3 p.m.
Support.
Moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes. Our next item is a date change for the closed session to review city manager candidate applicants.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to change the date for the closed session to review city manager candidate applications from Tuesday, September 18th, 2018 to Tuesday, September 11th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m.
We have moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Support.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes. We have two new commissions, and they need appointment of liaisons to these commissions, and this is a mayoral appointment, so I would like to move that we appoint Michael Kleinfeld to the Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission and appoint Sarah Lucido as a liaison to the Parks Commission. Do we have support?
Support.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido.
Yes.
You guys did want to do that, right?
I'd like to maybe explain my choice of people with the Parks Commission is because Sarah is on the Planning Commission, and I think there's a lot of things from parks that have to get in the master plan, so I think that's a really good way to make that communication. And then with the Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission, Cardi, I know you've worked real hard on it, but your wife is on it.
No, I was going to suggest not appointing me if you
So-
asked, so.
So I think that, and of course, anybody can go to any of these meetings because they're all open meetings. Anybody in the public can go to any of them, so I just don't want anybody to say that it's a conflict.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's move on then to structural changes to enhance the financial controls. Mr. Cotton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What you have before you is a compilation of a couple of months of thought put by the leadership team into the question of is there potential continuous improvement associated with the City of Eastpointe's financial practices. I want to thank every member of council who has given me a tour, shared with me insight, explained some of the background, and also the leadership team who has interacted with me as I asked questions and tried to imagine setting up some processes or structural improvements that would provide even additional assurances that to the community and to you that there would be transparency, efficiency, and ultimately the earning of trust, respect of all concerned associated with the city's financial practices. And I won't, obviously everyone knows of a couple of instances in the past where questions were raised and those questions have been answered and addressed. So this is really just icing on the cake. I would not say that anything is broken. I would say that this is an opportunity to look at some other ways in addition to what we do and perhaps pick and choose. So the menu approach as to whether you'd like to make any changes. Ultimately, the purchasing ordinance would need to change if you do. So in summary, the suggestion is that there be consideration of an audit committee. This is a committee that would meet at least once with the auditors annually, sometimes twice. I provided copies of the minutes of one community I know did it, but multiple communities I know do it. It's recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association. And it gives an opportunity for council representatives on that committee to ask questions in ways that make sure that there is no uncertainty as to whether or not there's standard financial practices being followed, including a time at the end when the audit is delivered and explained where staff is asked to leave, and it's just between the committee and the auditors, and that provides total unfettered opportunity if anyone was reserved to ask any question they would like. Having said that, if that audit committee decided to recommend that there be some greater investigation review than what was budgeted in terms of your annual audit, and that's possible. I've not seen it happen, but it's possible. That would need to then come back to the full city council, because that would take an expenditure that would likely need a budget adjustment. So that committee would not be authorized to launch on an expensive investigation, but could rather discuss whether anything more was necessary. Second, there is an opportunity to put a computer in this room here, the council offices, where you would be able to access the city's finances 24/7 in a way that would answer questions that you might have about the check register. I know our finance director makes himself available and is very quick about answering those questions, but that might answer a few that would then free him up for other duties if you had even greater access. I'm going to jump to, I'm reading from my report, but I'm going to jump towards the end. The list of local streets to be repaired. In my community where I reside, on the front page, it was the city council noting, deciding, debating what streets should be repaired next on a 6-year list. That's something that we're going to talk about on September 4th. That's actually a recommended practice, not only for public involvement in that policy making, but also because it helps assures that the dollars are being spent where you want them in a prioritized way, and that it's not based on some favoritism that maybe would creep into the process. So that's a recommendation that be part of your practice once you talk about it on September 4th. There's also another practice that in the past, unit pricing has been available for certain projects, and it's been a staff decision to extend those projects. And the most recent example was last summer when streets that were damaged by the water flow from the emergency were repaired to an extent that could be debated. Was that the minimum amount that needed to be repaired or not? Anyway, this policy would ensure that anything that unit pricing extension wouldn't happen without coming back to City Council. So now I'm going to talk about the purchasing ordinance. There's a draft included here, and there's a typo I see somewhere. So thank goodness there's no action requested of you tonight. And I'll explain what the typo is in a minute. But basically, the ordinance provides a definition of a project, so that kind of gives boundaries that will be mutually useful. Advanced purchase orders are already expected, but I'm advertising that they would be required from this point forward. Require discussion of projects before they're bid to the maximum extent feasible. There is a caveat, should there be an emergency, and I'm going to explain those emergency caveats in a minute. Increase the purchase order limit from the current 5,000 to 10,000. This keeps pace with inflation. It hasn't changed since 2000, and it's a form of waste to have it be too low. And as you've heard me say, too many steps and too many requirements is wasteful, and it would be a good idea to at least keep up with inflation, so that's recommended. And a phase-out report to the council of every project. There's examples provided here, some from the City of Holland, one that was done by AEW at the request of Joe Marucci for your city pavement project that you can see an example of. But this, if it ends up in the ordinance, it would be a requirement from every project from this point forward. And last, that any emergency should still remain here, but if this section is exercised, a summary of the costs must be sent to the City Council within 72 hours of determining the approximate number of the funds to be spent. So the council is in the loop on that. Given that some of these changes are new, you're going to have a new person in my position here in a couple of months. You might want to talk about whether you want to sunset these changes in 2 years. or so you get an automatic review scheduled, and it's not, it doesn't fade into everyone's memory as to what the intent was. You can assess what happened compared to what the intent and make any other adjustments necessary. So the typo in the ordinance is the largest paragraph towards the end of the first page that starts with any project that is not budgeted shall be brought to the attention of the city council before creating bid specifications. The second sentence there, the $10,000 limit, the last sentence, the $10,000 limit is for the entire project or service. And rather than a semicolon, it should say, and does not apply to materials that were bid in bulk. So the example provided is if you buy, $100,000 of salt, Randy can tell me if that's right or wrong, you don't, once you've approved the salt bid, you wouldn't come back, every time you get an increment delivered. That being said, I'd like to introduce that. That being said, I'd like to turn it over to our finance director for any additional thoughts, and our purchasing administrator, Randy Altimus, for any additional thoughts. And it's like I say, it's a menu approach here.
I'd like to know first, what's the intent? You're going to bring this back at the next council meeting on September 4th?
I can do so. I think if we want to move forward in the audit committee, we definitely want to get it done in September. But there's no rush, there's no priority. This is simply me doing due diligence, so you have something to think about. It could be 6 months from now. It could be when the new manager is here. It's simply to give you my assessment as to where there might be a potential way to bridge a small gap here or there in your structural financial controls.
Right. Mr. Blum?
Yes, the one thing I would say on the audit committee is I did speak with Dave Helisack about that. Main thing was there extra cost, but then what has he run into in other communities? He said in other communities it is generally individuals that have a financial background that are on this audit committee that would actually understand the reports, ask the appropriate questions. Generally, it's done either as a separate meeting or as a follow-up to the regular audit meeting, and there would be no extra cost involved. It's just a matter of staffing it with the appropriate people on that committee. The other thing on the purchase orders is that's actually been a bug up my rear since I got here, that people buy stuff, get an invoice, and then they do a purchase order, and the purchase order should be approved before they buy anything. So this would just formalize that process and make it a mandatory way of doing it, rather than at the back end, you do it at the front end. So that's the only comments I have on it.
Would you recommend the next item, increasing the purchase order limit from 5 to 10?
We've looked at that.
It's all the time, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
and
been a couple of years.
I actually went back and looked historically. Prior to 1953, there was no spending limit at all. If it was approved in the budget, you just spent within your budget and you were good. In 53, it was set up at $1,000. In 1976, it was increased to $2,000, and then in 2000, it was increased to $5,000. If that original $1,000 was adjusted for inflation, it would be over $9,000 today. And that's why, it's just cleaner to go with an even 10, but it would be inflation adjusted for the original 1953 amount.
How many projects would be between roughly 5 and 10 mark?
That'd be a Randy Altimus question.
It's probably not projects, it's probably purchase.
Right.
Yeah, it would be more purchasing, not projects. More equipment or something would fall into that more than projects. Most of our projects would be contractual that you would have to see anyway, so.
Well, so either, I was just looking for a rough, like how many agenda items difference are we looking, over a year or something, like couple?
I'd have no idea. I'd have to go back.
Okay. That's fine, thanks.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Blum for that history lesson of going back to 1953.
Yeah, you're gonna need to repeat that to me again sometime.
I do think it might be time to start looking at increasing that. Obviously, we're not acting on anything tonight, but I do like the idea of introducing some of these other controls. In terms of the emergency section at the very end, I guess that's the first thing I'll touch on. I'm not sure it entirely makes sense because when an emergency happens, 72 hours later, we're not making a decision on what funds need to be spent. Supposedly, it should have already happened, because that's kind of the,
You have no idea how much your funds are gonna be, even at 72 hours. And I believe that this, although I think it's a good idea, I believe that the emergency manual, emergency plan, has something specific relative to different departments. And so that might be included in that. In particular, I'm looking at DPW. I was a little bit, the plan is very specific about what you do during an emergency related to DPW incidents.
We could word that probably a little differently. I think probably just the important part is knowing that we did have to spend emergency funds. Maybe the exact number is not, the number at that time is not as important, but like, hey,
Well,
And I think also, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking that like, if we raise the amount, let's say to 10,000, so if the project, they estimate it's gonna cost over that 10,000 mark, then send us a summary just letting us know that this happened and that there's gonna be a cost, just so we have an idea or a background.
So it's very difficult. If you look at July 1st, when we had all the water mains breaking, I notified all of council because they said anything that's over 5,000 needs council approval for any expenditure. However, that's not necessarily true when you're in an emergency situation because your emergency plan takes over. But we did call each of the council people to say, we have an emergency and it's gonna be way over $5,000.
I would have to look at the manual, because maybe you're right, it does explain in there, because I think the issue we've run into is what is the scope of an emergency in terms of the cement over, once you've patched everything and, kept the ship afloat, the next step, like putting in the permanent cement above and stuff like that, so maybe that would be.
So fix the problem, stop the water leak, or stop the snow, whatever. You fix the problem and temporarily, and then those final fixes come back to council.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable. I think that's all I had in terms of my thoughts on this for now.
So, Mr. Blum, Mr. Cotton said that you would have some comments. I'm sorry, I'm looking at you. You know I'm looking at you.
Too many Randys still.
I know we do that to
been a
people
long
on
day.
purpose, but, actually, Mr. Cotton and I have worked on this. I'm fine with it, the purchasing side of things. I always have been, so, I don't have any comments on it. We put in basically my comments already.
And your comment was to provide a definition of a project, or was that engineering?
Well, that was kind of a discussion piece on just trying to define it a little further than what we had already, because it really didn't explain it as far as when we were discussing it, so.
The next one, the required discussion of projects before they're bid to the extent that's feasible. It just seems to me that when we have our major capital improvement plan night, and we talk about all the capital improvements that are coming, we're given a pretty good explanation at that time of what all the projects are gonna be and the estimate of how much they're gonna cost. So, and we do have a list that's, 5 years in advance of capital improvements? Is that what our plan is currently? It's not 10 years, it's 5 years capital improvement,
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, we go out 6 years. And it modifies and evolves and grows and shrinks based on what
But I think
our
at that time,
environment
we've
is, but
given
it's
a
pretty
pretty good
stable.
description of what the project is gonna be.
Yes.
And there's always changes, but those usually come out when the project has gone out to bid.
And like I did with the fencing project, I brought it to you to ask permission because it wasn't in the budget. It was something that came up after the fact that, you know, a problem occurred that we were not aware of. And so we brought that back to you for permission to actually start the process.
Yeah, and this section, I would say, is not meant to regard maintenance items that we expect to happen every year, like buying salt. So if we can, I think you're trying to word it like that, Mr. Cotton, with that, the materials bid in bulk. Yeah, we don't want, I mean, if we know that's gonna happen every year and it's not a capital project and it's not a new large project, I think that we, because there's, I'm sure should be able to think of something off the top of our head that we spend 100 grand on in a year, but we always need to do that, yeah. Right, does that make sense?
Well, and our salt is bid with Mitten, so we're within a 39 community or 40 community, you know, bid process, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say even fuel is under state bid, and every time they fill the tanks up at 10 Mile, it's, it depends on the price of gas at the time, but anywhere from 7 to 10 grand to fill the tanks up. That would be considered a bulk purchase. It's budgeted, it's under a state bid. It doesn't come back to council every time we need to fill the tank.
Fuel up, yeah.
I think the key language in here is any project that is not budgeted shall be brought to the
Correct.
attention. So if it is in our CIP and we put it in during the budget,
Well, but we still get all the people that bid and then pick a bidder.
yeah,
Or-
I just,
or am I not on the same wavelength?
This
as
is
you?
saying you come back to council for permission to go out for bid if it hasn't been budgeted.
Oh.
Or if it's
okay.
in the CIP already, we go out for bid and then bring back the bids, you know, results.
Oh, I see. I think this was meant to prevent like what happened with the wayfinding signs. We were missing a bunch, well, at least one sign. You know, we were missing signs. Some were, there were a couple other items I don't recall off the top of my head. And then we essentially went back out because the specs weren't what we wanted, not because we were unhappy with the bidders. That would have been a whole second, issue. We didn't even get that far. To prevent that, right?
yeah, or us coming after doing the bidding and us saying, we never had interest in doing this
Right.
project,
I think that was the issue. I think it went out for bid before we even discussed doing the project. Like, it wasn't in our capital improvement plan.
The
So maybe that was part
wayfinding
of it.
signs,
Right.
it had been back and forth.
Well, at least in the end, it wasn't exactly what we wanted. Whatever the
Well,
details
that's why
were
we
before.
buried it twice, I think, the wayfinding signs.
No, you're right. It
We
did
went
go
out a
back and
second
forth,
time.
but I think that was originally when it got brought to us, so it wasn't.
Yeah, I think the first time I'd heard of it was the first time it was on the agenda, so yeah. We didn't talk about it before.
I have a little bit of a question about the audit committee. I have a problem, this is no offense to the people that are on council currently, but I think it's very difficult to get council members, and the one from Holland suggests 2 council members. I think it's very, very difficult to get 2 council people that are financially astute to be able to work with the audit committee unless they're just very broad subjects that they want to bring up. And those you can always bring up when the auditors first come forward and they send a letter to council that if there's something they question that you can do it. I can't believe Plant Moran or any other auditing company would come and be in a committee meeting for free. It just doesn't happen. And they said they would do that.
Yeah,
They're probably going to include that in their overall costs.
next time, maybe, but yeah.
Could you ask them, like, how many other communities do that, just so we have an idea that, I mean, the communities that they work with, like, is there other ones that do an audit committee?
Well, yeah, I talked to Dave Helisack directly, and there are other communities. He didn't say who or how many,
Right, okay.
but I can
I would
find
love
that
to
out.
have
Just like an idea of like a percentage of like how many communities actually, do it.
And do they, if we were to just call them about because they, offer it up in the letter essentially, if we do call them, are they charging us separate for that, or is that just part of the audit? What
Part
we
of
pay them for
the-
the audit, right?
Part of the service,
Okay.
correct?
So we would just probably next time, I guess I guess the bid goes for a couple more years with them, I'm sure, right? Because we just for 5 years.
I
think-
think we've
or
only
was
got
that
one more
just-
year, actually. I'd have to pull that out.
Oh, okay, maybe it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Good luck when you go out for bid.
Yeah, that's why it would be interesting just to see like how many other communities have an audit committee.
That would be really interesting, and I would like to see what the function is. I mean, we have Holland, and it was a very good description here, but I'd like to see what others also do and what their composition of their committee is.
Yeah.
I know not too long ago when the first audit came up, when I was elected council, I actually went to Plant Moran, and they took time out for like almost 2 hours with me and didn't charge me, so, because all that audit stuff was new to me, and they broke it down, and they took time out to do that, and I drove downtown Detroit, so I don't think it, would be a big problem, because if they're working for us, I think they would want us to understand certain things that they write down, so.
Well, and everybody on council, with the exception of you, had gone to the class that MML provided. And in that class, it talks about the audit, but that's just an overview of it. So when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, it becomes a little bit complex, and it becomes very complex.
Plant Moran they are good about answering questions. I'm sure all of us have
Yeah.
probably called them at some point
Yeah.
and had a conversation.
But it may be in the future, if you go out for bids, you may not end up with Plant Moran, and they may be charging, there's one group of auditors out there that charge for every call that you make, so. This is great. So what are we going to do with this, council?
I think we're just bringing it back on September 4th, right?
All right. And you're going to give us more information on the audit committees, how many and where, and what their composition is. Anything else on this? All right, let's move to payroll and bills.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $3,268,364.72.
Support.
Move with support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes. Move to the second hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard? Mr. Creech.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Harvey Creek, resident of East Detroit. Thank you, Mr. Cotton. I really appreciate, I don't know if it was you or whoever, the council itself. Now, I don't know, are you calling this Parks and Recreation Committee? Are you calling it Parks Committee? Are you calling it Recreation Committee?
Parks.
Just Parks. Okay, thank you very much, because that's what I said. I'm hoping that, especially since it has nothing to do, but I was hoping it would be Parks and Rec, because number one, I hope the people know that they were just dealing with just the parks, because the parks belong to the city and Rec is an entity. So I'm saying, when you bring these people in, and I said there again too, but now it's just the parks. But a situation I went into last week, I come in and see Mr. Cotton. Now, and I'm glad you brought up especially the ethnics, because we discussed this. Now that I am going to the parks and the rest of this situation, me being a shuffleboard instructor, or per se, whatever it was, there was a gentleman that come through there that made a very bad gesture. I didn't care for it at all. I went down to the police department. I explained to him what happened, and the gentleman had come back, and he wanted to play, and he addressed another situation I didn't like at all. So I had to do something to protect the city, East Detroit, Roseville, and Parks. So I went, and then after talking to you, Mr. Cotton, I was hoping that me, being an officer, signing off on the ethics, would take care of the situation, but it didn't. So I went to the Recreation Department, I signed, I got a piece of paper stating I was a volunteer. I had to go through, they're doing a background check on me. So, now I don't know how you want to handle this anymore, But the politics and everything, these lines of demarcation and the rest of this stuff are getting worse instead of better. Does Rare belong to Rare and the parks belong to us? We've got to get something, like I told them at our meeting. There's so many lines. There's no lines drawn in the sand anymore. Excuse me, Mr. Cotton, you were there, and you understand exactly what I said. Whose responsibility is whose responsibility? Somebody's going to have to get together and meet this all down. I said, Mike, and I'm glad you were there. And I said, everybody, Rare's closing down for 3 weeks. Now that the shuffleboard is fired up, a lot of people are really, really enjoying it. And I'm glad to see this too. We're going to have the equipment come over there by the 17th. I'm making the pucks and providing the pucks. I will have them there. But hopefully they will have some kind of a schedule too. And please, the children that love it, you cannot get that equipment out without your parents or an adult there that's going to be responsible for it. I was the one, I like this too because I said, that equipment, once you break it, you have nothing to play with. And a lot of them are really responsible. These kids are coming along great. You've got some great players here. I hope it comes down to, as I said, I'd like to see you all come out. I'd like to play all of you, and I'd like to see you get the opportunity where you could go over. St. Clair Shores is looking for blood. I went over there before, too. They wanted to come to the recreation center and challenge and the rest of stuff, too. But I want to come out. You don't have to be a professional to play. It's a lot of fun. But I understand, especially, I don't even want to go down there when the sun's out. But I go down there in the evening. I go down 2 or 3 times a week, and they're waiting for me.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I say that they're really, really enjoying it. So please, if we can get there, and I say even with the ethnics, coming up, and the committees coming up, get it all together before it starts. If they have to have a background check, whatever we have to do, present it to them. And I'm hoping I can get a copy right now. The purchasing coming out, when you do get it settled, I'd like to see exactly how it reads. And I say, I appreciate your time, but a lot of things, please think about all of them, get them done, and let's see if we can get the city back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Karen Morajan, as promised, the conclusion in regards to the rabbit I spoke about in the first public comment period. Again, that cage was not an appropriate size for the rabbit. There was no litter box provided, and under the anti-cruelty statute, it does speak to the issue of sanitary conditions. So imagine yourself being confined to a small setting, and where you urinated and defecated, you have less than 2 feet to get away from that. And then you're forced to endure that for 5 hours in the baking sun. And there's no shelter. There's no adequate food. There's no water provided. In addition, the rabbit was not able to escape what is a noisy, chaotic environment. There's loud music. There's people yelling, shouting, laughing, screaming. They're having a great time. That's not a great time for a rabbit. Rabbits are very high-stress animals. They do not like noisy and chaotic environments. That was a very inappropriate environment for that rabbit or the other animals to be subjected to. In addition, you have, adults and kids putting their hands, through the cage all over the rabbit's body. You even had some kids putting their fingers in the rabbit's face. Rabbits don't like that. They can, will, and may bite when they're stressed out or without any warning at all. And, these owners were highly irresponsible and neglectful. They did nothing to warn the public about zoonotic diseases that can be passed on to children, to pregnant women. There were no warning signs whatsoever. Don't put your fingers in the cage. Don't put your fingers in the bunny's face.
Yes.
It doesn't matter that they have insurance certification. God forbid, if that rabbit bit anyone, I bet you anything they would have killed the rabbit because it cost them all kinds of money. Again, the police are so burdened. They've got to play referee, social worker, everything else. The only thing we haven't asked the police to do is mow the lawn, shovel the snow and remove the garbage. They should not have to do animal control. We really need to finalize this immediately with Macomb County Animal Control. Please speak to Scott Atkins, the Roseville City Manager. He is just pleased beyond belief that MCAC has jurisdiction. I'm out of time. I have more. Feel free to ask me questions. I'm more than happy to help out and assist. Rich, I'll write the brief. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Seeing none, the second hearing of the public is closed. Move on to mayor and council reports. Let's start with Mr. Kleinfeld.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying I've heard the arts commission's like really hitting the ground running, so I'm excited to see what they have to do. I think Parks is going to be similar once we make those appointments. I want to thank Randy Ultimus for running elections and our election workers that day. It was really hot. I know at my voting location, I saw you there, dragging in fans and stuff because it was just a long, hot day. So I appreciate our election workers, and it always seems to go really smoothly in our city, which speaks to how well our department's functioning. And I wanted to say thank you to some of the residents that came out and supported Eastpointe in terms of the DOJ oral arguments. If nothing else, it was definitely an interesting day. So that's all I have.
Mrs. Lucido.
Well, first, I would like to thank everyone who came out and voted in the primary election, and also thanks to Mr. Ultimus for all of his hard work setting up for the election and all the election workers. Once again, I had no issues at the polling station, went in nice and smooth. There was actually a couple people there when I went, so I was happy to see that. But other than that, I think that that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Owens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank everybody for coming out this evening. I want to give it big thanks to Bill Driscoll. He just left the city of Eastpointe. I tried to make the cake cutting event. I missed him, but I didn't miss the cake. So thank you for your years of service. The time that I have known him, any opinions or ideas I had, he listened and implemented those opinions and ideas. And also, I would like to also bring back, I had a back-to-school event yesterday, Monday. It was called Cuts with the Council at Mr. Dre's Barber and Beauty Shop on Kelly Road. It was amazing. It was a whole bunch of kids. I didn't get to promote it like I wanted to, but it was packed. And it was a lot of people that showed up, the residents, the community showed up. Kevin Hertel, state rep, showed up. The Wayne County Sheriff's Department showed up. Eastpointe police officers showed up. Attorney Regina Thomas showed up. Epic Entertainment showed up. She has her own popcorn, cotton candy, balloons, and she's a resident of Eastpointe and has a business in Eastpointe, and she provided all of those things. CARE showed up. Also, Eastside Community Church that I belong to showed up. The Kiwanis Club of Eastpointe showed up, and they provided all the food and snacks for the kids. Again, thank you to Mr. Dre for giving all the kids haircuts. He had provided other barbers from other barbershops to come out, and they came and assisted. Nobody got paid. They did it from their heart. And that was an awesome thing. Universal Macomb Ambulance provided 50 book bags. Inside those book bags was school supplies. Kevin Hertel, let me go back to him, he provided a whole bunch of bags and plus toothbrushes and shoe carnival gift certificates as well. So thank you again for that. Sheriff's Department, monetary donations from residents and people of the community. I thank you for making my first event possible. Also, thank you to Mr. Kleinfeld for bringing snacks for the kids. He just got off work. It was hot. He was tired. And he made sure he brought snacks for the kids. Before he even left out the door, it was gone. But thank you for doing that. It was an amazing event. I want to do it each and every year. It was important to the kids. Some kids probably don't know when they had a haircut, or some people couldn't have. It was really for the boys, but then I got a call a text actually from a young girl who has 9 siblings and said, Miss Owens, do you have school supplies for the girls too? And so I seen it was a bigger issue, and so I said, come get some. And so we ran out, and some people came, missed out, so I ended up going back to Office Depot today, took their number information down so I can make sure they had school supplies for this year. Also, August 16th, the Eastpointe schools will be giving out school supplies as well. And thanks to the barber who did the cuts with me yesterday, he has provided 5 free cuts for that event for the Eastpointe kids at that event as well. And so thanks to him again. So that'd be August 16th. August 19th will be a euchre tournament at Grady's Lounge, Eston Roseville. It's $25. You play euchre, other board games. It includes lunch as well. It's $25. And some of the proceeds will be going to the 4-H Club of America. And also, I want to say something about August 28th is my Coffee with the Council. I think that will be the last event I will be doing this year, where people can come out and talk to me about certain issues. In Eastpointe, that's at Donna's Restaurant on 10 Mile and Kelly. And last but not least, I have to give another shout out to the family of the fallen officer, Sergeant Lee Smith, Wayne County Sheriff. He died today. He was just jogging in Hines Park. Somebody hit him, dragged him, and kept going. So he taught me a lot when I was becoming a sheriff. He was just about to retire in 15 days and ended up dying. He was with the Sheriff's Department over 25 years. So I want to just give a shout out to his family, friends, the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, because we all feeling it, and also local, the police departments that did know him and go through the same thing we go through, because we all brothers and sisters. So just want to give a shout out and tell the family out there, we love you, we loved him, and if you need anything, just give us a call from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, and that's all.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Sorry about your friend, Monique.
Thank you.
Harvey, I'm not sure if maybe I'm missing your point on the Parks and Rec, but the Parks Commission, would discuss the parks that the city owns, and we are able to do what we'd like with the physical parks, and then RARE administers all the programs that we do. I said when we were creating the Parks Commission, if recreation activities happen to be discussed, which I personally encourage, they can make it back to RARE or go through the proper channel. I wouldn't say no to not discuss a positive idea, or if someone has a good idea. So I hope that clears up your question. And then also, it was good to see Shantae Butler out here earlier. She was the one talking to hearing the public earlier about her home, and she was a show cause hearing that we had. Usually we don't hear too many positive effects of the show cause hearings, so it was very great to hear that we put some pressure on this landlord, and they actually made some changes. Unfortunately, the house is being changed, but she's also moving, so we did lose a great resident, unfortunately. But she was happy about how everything went, so I think that was really nice. We had a joint city council planning commission meeting that I thought went very well. We discussed our master plan, which I think is a humongous step forward from our current master plan. And I thought we had a great discussion. I thought Mr. Cotton, I think my favorite idea of the night was yours, the Kelly Road change. Hopefully the planning commission discusses that further, and I think that's going in the right direction too. Again, that's posted on the website. If anyone hasn't looked at it yet, take a look at that before we finalize it and give us some feedback. The rare sizzling summer night, I showed up a little late, but from what I understand, there were many more people there before I showed up. And it was a great event like usual. I'm very impressed by Rare, that how many people they bring out to an event like that. That was awesome to see. Even when I got there, there were still hundreds of people left. I'll keep in mind, Ms. Maragian, your comments about the vendor and the animals. I don't like to see animals suffer either. And then Election Day. Yep, thank you, Randy and team. Like you said, I didn't have any issue voting. Was in and out in just a couple minutes, even with like a whole bunch of people in front of me. Went smoothly as far as I understand, and for anyone that didn't see, the Smart Millage passed and our Eastpointe Community Schools operating millage passed. And I also went to the DIA over the weekend. They have a Star Wars exhibit if anyone is interested. I'm not a very good computer nerd because I don't know actually that much about Star Wars, even though I'm a software developer, and that's pretty much a requirement. But I still enjoyed the exhibit, and you all pay a millage for the DIA, so at least go. You do have to pay extra for the special exhibits, but you can go to the DIA and check out everything there as often as you want, and it's free. You get free admission to everything but the special exhibits. So check that out if you can, and that was all I had, Madam Mayor. Thanks.
I don't have very many more things over and above that's already been spoken about. The schools event is going to be a major event over at the old Kelly Middle School for all of the kids, and they've been planning it, and they have a lot of gifts. They have school books. They have so many things that they'll be giving out. And it's not sponsored just by the school, but also by the Chamber of Commerce and a number of businesses that have also contributed. So it's going to be a major event. I will have to say, the major event in my life that's just driving me crazy this week is the reunion for the East Detroit High School alumni from the class of 1945 to the class of 1965. And we rented the pavilion, and here comes the food truck for Gleaners, and it's going to be right there. So I don't know which one is going to win out, but it's going to be interesting to see a bunch of older people and all the younger people, and I hope that they all merge together at the same time, because they're going to be in the same place at the same time. And I'm very excited that you had the Kiwanis involvement with your program yesterday. They're a good group of people, and they work a lot with youth. I'd like to support, even though I couldn't vote for it, the wine and cheese event that's coming up for the Rotary is sponsoring. The Rotary donates a great deal to our local community, and they also work with kids and with literacy programs. And this is a good way to show a business along with a nonprofit group with a service organization. So it's neat that a wine and cheese will be over at Drew's, and that will be a major event. I will tell you that September is going to be very busy, September and October, so get your running shoes on, because homecoming is early and it's going to be on a Friday night, so I don't know how we're going to do the parade, but that's going to be interesting. And then the Harvest Fest with the Lions Club is going to be a big event, and I think the date on that is October 13th. So they do have a petting zoo with that, and I will make sure that all your recommendations are taken care of. But it is a farmer, and they're very, very good with the animals. Don't think I have anything else. I would publicly like to thank Mr. Harvey Creech. We were working over at the schoolhouse, and I don't have Mr. Creech's number, but I called somebody that had Mr. Creech's number, and
He's got a cell phone?
And I asked him to bring his chainsaw. It's because we had a couple weed trees, mulberries, to cut down, and I didn't know whether Mr. Creech would come, but Mr. Creech came with his chainsaw, and he was a huge help to all of us over there. So thank you, Mr. Creech. I really appreciated you coming with very little notice. It was very nice. And I know he's mad at me because I mentioned it, but that's okay. And we're going into closed session still? No need to do that, so I'll entertain. We'll be very happy about that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Support?
Move and support, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. Meeting is adjourned at 9:35.